lived below the lower middle income poverty line of 3.65 per day, that is the $3.65 per day, which is equivalent to 63 Rand 44 cents at recent exchange rates. And on industrialization and sectoral policies, a well-resourced, high-impact and whole-of-government-driven industrialization policy, including domestic beneficiation of our mineral resources and localization, is a key imperative that the SACP will deepen its effort to ensure it's adopted and implemented. Sectoral support policies must be directed towards securing sustainable livelihoods and radically raising the levels of food production to ensure national food sovereignty. I'm going to share this water. My apologies for that.
Cheers.
Yes, cheers, even at home. This is essential, not only for domestic food security, but also for annually boosting agricultural exports. Sectoral policies must also focus on raising production levels and exports across all industries, with a specific focus driven by aggressive, broad-based industrialization to break the stranglehold of historical underdevelopment and economic stagnation. Through developmental sectoral policies, the government must take decisive action to lower the exorbitant cost of communication and transportation. This includes slashing the price of mobile data and advancing the urgent need for an integrated, safe, reliable, and affordable public transport system that serves the working class, not just the privileged few. For too long, industrial policy measures and the funding necessary for industrialization have been sabotaged by fiscal consolidation, austerity, or budget cuts. This must be stopped immediately if South Africa is to break free from the shackles of low national output, deindustrialization, and the crippling levels of unemployment and poverty that devastate the unemployed population of the working class. All unnecessarily outsourced public sector functions must now be insourced. The remainder of the state's procurement of goods and services must be uncompromising in promoting localization and developing domestic production capacity. Expanding skills development across all sectors of the economy remains very critical. The government must also rapidly scale up the post-school education and training sector, including through consideration to establish new technical and vocational education and training colleges and additional universities to meet the needs of an industrialized economy. Scaling up investment in the economy and turning around state-owned enterprises. Public development finance institutions such as the Industrial Development Corporation, Public Investment Corporation, and the Development Bank of Southern Africa must strengthen their role in driving industrialization and supporting investment in state-led infrastructure development. These institutions should strive to build a leading role in the state in building a powerful state-directed economy that can challenge the dominance of private monopoly capital and demonopolize monopoly or oligopoly-dominated sectors of our economy. State-owned enterprises, including those in the financial sector, such as the Land Bank, must be turned around and thrive. The state must actively drive the growth of the public economy, ensuring it not only survives but thrives through robust expansion and diversification. The public economy must advance to become a key force in transforming South Africa's economic landscape, unlocking opportunities that serve the people as a whole, the majority being the working class. On financial sector transformation, to drive the turnaround and expansion of the public economic sector, the government must, with equal importance, prioritize the immediate implementation of the financial sector transformation as an apex medium-term development plan priority, including the commitments adopted by all alliance partners in the May 2024 election manifesto, namely building a state banking sector through the creation of development and sectoral banks, among others, focusing on supporting industrialization. Establishing a public retail banking system to meet the people's financial service needs, empowering provinces to create state-owned provincial banks, supporting the growth of cooperative banks, including ensuring that they gain affordable access to the national payment system, finalizing the establishment of a public sovereign wealth fund and build it to serve as a key source of funding for transformation and development goals, introducing prescribed assets to direct increased investments into industrialization, infrastructure development, and particularly development of our rural communities. Adequately recapitalizing public development finance institutions to ensure they thrive and support transformation and development efforts. The implementation of this and other commitments in the progressive thrust of the manifesto cannot depend solely on the government. Consistent working class mobilization is therefore essential, both in securing implementation and in combating capitulation or reformism. On positive impact of radical policy change, a modeling by the Applied Development Research Solutions, ADRS, on some of the measures we outlined, plus others at significant levels of macroeconomic policy support and change, underlined a radical reduction of unemployment and poverty by 2030. The real problem now, despite the availability of this modeling, in addition to the constraint associated with the persistent legacy of colonialism and apartheid, the impact of the multiple global capitalist crises, and the recent history of corporate and mafia state capture, is the government's choice of austerity, hidden behind or executed under the euphemism of fiscal consolidation. To confront the problems, the SACP will combine mobilizing and developing technical capacity with advancing sustained mobilization, building maximum working class unity, and working with other progressive forces. In particular, forging a popular left front and building a powerful socialist movement of the workers and poor. On fighting gender-based violence, the Central Committee strongly condemned the brutality of rape across the country and the extortion called protection from rape demanded by rape gangs from targeted victims, particularly in Mtegezweni area in the Eastern Cape. We call on the law enforcement authorities to leave no stone unturned in hunting down and bringing the perpetrators to book. The SACP has directed its structures in the Eastern Cape and across the country to strengthen consistent community mobilization efforts and technical capacity building to complement the law enforcement authorities in clamping down on the sexual assault and other forms of gender-based violence, including femicide. This must be intensified now ahead of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence from 25 November to 10 December 2024 and sustained beyond this period. Equally, the Central Committee reaffirmed the SACP's Red October message by strongly condemning the recent criminal massacres in the Eastern Cape, which claimed 18 lives in Lusikisiki. Some of the people were buried from yesterday. This attack reflects a broader crisis of lawlessness, with communities terrorized by drug networks, construction mafias, extortion gangs, and other criminal syndicates. Decisive action by law enforcement authorities and consistent societal mobilization are essential, leaving no stone unturned as part of an integrated effort required, simultaneously increasing our total productive forces as rapidly as possible to resolve the unemployment, poverty, inequality, and social reproduction crisis of capitalism. On international solidarity and the struggle against imperialism, the SACP stands firmly with the people of Palestine in their just struggle for their fundamental right to national self-determination and against the genocides, other human rights violations, and occupation of their land by the apartheid Israeli settler regime, which the Central Committee strongly condemned. Israel must end its occupation of Palestine unconditionally and immediately, and it must end the war in the Middle East. The leaders of apartheid Israeli settler regime must be held accountable for all the genocide and other human rights violations they have committed against the Palestinian people, as well as the blatant disregard for the rulings of the International Court of Justice. We reiterate our unequivocal condemnation of the imperialist United States-backed Israeli settler regime for the systemic genocide, ongoing Palestinian human rights violations, and illegal occupation of Palestinian land, depriving Palestinian people of their statehood. In the same vein, the Central Committee condemned the Israeli settler regime's attacks, killings, and destructions in Syria, in Iran, and currently in Lebanon. We pledge solidarity with the entire axis of resistance against Zionism and apartheid Israeli settler regime in the Middle East. We stand with the people equally of Western Sahara in their just struggle against occupation by the imperialist-backed Morocco government. The Central Committee welcomed the ANC statement reaffirming its solidarity with the people of Western Sahara and calling to order its International Relations Subcommittee Chairperson, Mapaila, regarding his utterances on Morocco and Western Sahara. I think he's deputy to Comrade the DSG. The Central Committee reiterated the SACP's condemnation of the imperialist regime of France for its unlawful recognition of Morocco's so-called sovereignty over Western Sahara. We welcome the recent European Court of Justice ruling that the European Commission breached the right of people in Western Sahara to self-determination by concluding trade deals with Morocco on fish, agricultural and other products from Western Sahara through Morocco. We reiterate our revolutionary solidarity equally with the people of Swaziland and in their just struggle for democracy, and call for the unconditional unbanning of all political parties, the release of political prisoners, and the safe return of political exiles. South African law enforcement authorities must act swiftly in investigating the recent forced poisoning and attempted assassination of Swaziland People's United Democratic Movement leader, Comrade Mlungisi Makhanya, as well as the assassinations of other Swaziland pro-democracy activists, in this case, for instance, Comrade Advocate Thulani Maseko, as well as the abduction of other pro-democracy activists from South Africa back into Swaziland, where they are tried and sentenced to many years in jail. The SACP reiterates its unwavering support for the people and government of Cuba against the ongoing imperialist aggression, the illegal economic blockade, and sanctions against Cuba by the United States regime. We reiterate our call for an end to every aspect of the imperialist aggression and blockade to end unconditionally and with immediate effect. Equally important, the imperialist regime of the United States must remove Cuba from the so-called list of state sponsors of terrorism. Of anything, there's nothing so insulting than this accusation against Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism. In the same vein, the Central Committee reaffirmed its unwavering solidarity with the people and democratically elected government of Venezuela under President Nicolas Maduro. We send our delegation to observe elections, and the people of Nicaragua, as well as the people of Bolivia. We stand firmly against United States imperialist attempts at undermining their democratic national sovereignty and destabilizing their respective countries in an their anti-imperialist gains. On a sad note, we end with tributes. While in session, the Central Committee received the sad news that Comrade King Sibiya, a lifelong South African activist and member of our party and champion of housing rights, breathed his last. Sibiya, who had dedicated much of his life to fighting unscrupulous practices by banks, court officials, and corrupt insurance practitioners, where he recovered many people's houses. As the leader of the Ilungelele to Human Rights Foundation, Sibiya stood at the forefront of battles against unjust evictions and unlawful repossessions of home, often sold at auction for a fraction of their value by various banks. Sbia's tireless efforts bore fruit in significant legal victories, such as the 2018 Johannesburg High Court ruling, which mandated that repossessed homes cannot be auctioned without a reserve price. This means when the banks sell the houses, they must take what is due to them and give the remainder to the owner of the house. The banks over the years have been taking this money for themselves. In fact, we require an investigation into this thing so that the banks must account for practically defrauding homeowners that they sold their houses. This judgment was a hard-fought victory that sought to prevent the abusive banking practices that had allowed properties to be sold for as little as 10 rand, devastating homeowners, particularly from disadvantaged backgrounds and communities. Equally, another message of condolences goes to the family of Comrade Tito Mboweni and to the ANC. During our Central Committee meeting, we received the sad news of the passing on or the death of Comrade Tito Mboweni, and we sent our heartfelt condolences to him and his family and the broader liberation movement on this great loss encountered. Comrade Tito Mboweni, the former ANC National Executive Committee member, will be remembered for his significant contribution to the liberation struggle, for leading the development of progressive labor legislation as South Africa's first Minister of Labor following our hard-won April 1994 democratic breakthrough. Lastly, the Central Committee extends its sincere condolences to one of our members, Central Committee members, Comrade Chupu Stanley Mathabata, who's also the Deputy Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development, and to the entire Mathabata family for the tragic loss encountered. On the final day today of our plenary, we received the heartbreaking news that Mathabata's mother, Meg Grace Mathabata, breathed her last today. This is the end of the Central Committee statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me take questions. You will be the first one to say, and then we will follow. Yeah. You can proceed freely.
Thank you. I'm just trying to switch this on. Okay, it's fine. I'm sure you can hear me. Okay, my first question is, you've spoken about the reconfiguration of the alliance from outside. And you're talking about a broad alliance with left-leaning organizations. Does that include looking possibly at compacting with parties in the progressive caucus, for instance, like the MK and the EFF? Is that a possibility? That's my first question. My second one is that, am I correct in my understanding that you're saying that the ANC under President Cyril Ramaphosa is right-wing? And if that is the case, by implication, it would take a kind of austerity stance towards government spending. So your suggestion that you want state-led investment, expansion of public employment, the BIG to be instituted, how is that going to happen if you actually understand that you're actually dealing with a right-wing government? That's the second one. My third one is, have you been invited to attend the ANC's 100 Days in the GNU celebrations tomorrow at Luthuli House? Will you be honoring that particular invitation? My last one is, you have spoken about Mr. Tito Mboweni, but how do you see his legacy from a working class and poor people of South Africa perspective in terms of him as the Reserve Bank and the Finance Minister of South Africa?
Thanks.
Sorry, Sokoba from Eyewitness News. Just one question for me. I think it builds on what my colleague has asked about the configuration. You mentioned that you mentioned something about elections. I don't know. I just want a bit of clarity. Are you not ruling out that in part of this mobilization against the GNU, that you might also look at contesting elections? Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Jess. And the National Officer Ross.
Anyone wants to take first?
No, you go. We'll be led by you.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The several questions. Certainly, about building a popular movement, socialist movement of the workers and the poor. It's a process that we've already begun to do in our communities. In the townships, in villages, we've already begun to do that. Working to respond to the untenable living conditions of the poor, particularly in the field of food security, in the field of agriculture. We have started some extensive work there. And in that regard, we have found some of the exciting members of community, some organized, some in an organized form, and we are also helping to organize them in that space. So it doesn't necessarily specify which organization we will engage with. I can say, yes, in the context of a general anti-austerity movement, we will work with all forces that will fight neoliberalism, for instance, and budget cuts that are denying our people basic services and even economic development. So in that regard, we don't necessarily rule out what kind of organization in a particular community our comrades will work with. As per the particular members that we have, organization that we have mentioned, we have not had engagements with them. When we were negotiating the possibility of a minority government option, we had felt we could engage with the EFF, and we started the process of engagement in that regard. But as you know, the minority government didn't happen, and we also discussed a wide range of other issues in that regard. But it was in the context of establishing a new government so that we don't have to work with the neoliberal forces of the DA and the Freedom Front. And we also, in that space, by the way, indicated that we also did not want to work with forces of state capture that may be represented by the MK party. So going forward, we'll engage things on the basis of programmatic issues on the ground. The reconfiguration of the alliance, the alliance reconfiguration process has taken too long. And it has led us to this trap where we are as a movement. The arrogance sometimes of certain leaders, particularly in the ANC, who act on our behalf without us. That kind of an approach, our Central Committee was very clear, should no longer be accepted. Of course, in the context of engagements that have taken place, you know that in 2019, the entire Alliance Political Council, that included some of the leadership of the current leadership of the ANC in the top 7, adopted a framework of a reconfigured alliance document, a joint document. But last year, the ANC developed their own document. And taking us back and even expressing things that we did not necessarily say as a Communist Party. For instance, that reconfiguration will liquidate the African National Congress. Completely irrelevant to that particular process. That process seeks to strengthen the capacity of the revolutionary forces headed by the African National Congress. On the 100 days of the GNU celebrations tomorrow, we have rejected the invitation. We will not be going. Albeit it's been laced together with thanking the people who voted for the African National Congress, for which we were in the campaign. It feels sad, but we will not be going as a Communist Party. And therefore, on Comrade Tito Mboweni, we think all our comrades, Tito and other comrades, must be respected for their unwavering fight for national liberation of our country in the struggle against apartheid and against imperialism and against colonialism. Tito was one of those who lost his youth to go and embark on a struggle to fight against the apartheid regime. And of course, when he became Minister of Labor, he led a progressive introduction of labor laws in our country that workers today still enjoy. We appreciate that. And we've been on record as well that when he was Minister of Finance, even when we've had differences with him, but they were comradely, and was one of the most honest comrades. If he didn't agree with something, he tells you on the spot, here I don't agree, and we sit down and debate. That was his nature. And we want to extend our condolences once more to his family and to the entire liberation movement as a whole. The issue regarding that aspect on the participation in the elections, we have never ruled this option out. It has always been there. As you know, in our last augmented central committee last year around April, we took a decision that given the counter-revolutionary threat posed to the national democratic revolution to our movement, the counter-revolutionary threats largely coming from international capital, working with monopoly capital here in South Africa, and which we expressed clearly of the capitalist forces that have funded other parties and created even new parties just so that they can contest the African National Congress. And the IEC political party funding of this year's last third and fourth quarter gives you full indication of who funded who in the political space to actually oppose the liberation movement. To that extent, we took a position that we will still be with the African National Congress in this campaign, the 2024 general elections. That's what happened. But we are still engaging in this process as the Communist Party going forward.
On the question around why do we believe that how do we believe that the left-leaning policies are going to be implemented successfully by the GNU, we want to say categorically clear that we believe that the GNU arrangement has minimized the capacity of the state to be able to implement policy, the left-leaning policies. But well, the ANC believe that it can. So what we're doing ourselves now, we're saying we will have to force the ANC to ensure that it happens as it promises. But we don't believe that the whole limitations, the limitations there are actually hamstringing it from doing so. And that's why we're feeling that the best way that they should have taken a left-leaning position, taking a minority governance, government with some national unity features. That would have assisted them to be free in terms of implementing left-leaning policies that will allow them to move a little bit faster than the 30 years that we've been in. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do we have follow-ups? In the absence of follow-ups and noting the pressure to file and write, may you allow me to close the session? Agreed, colleagues? Thank you so much.
And to file well.
So I hope.
No, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Siyabona but ake ngirashe man.
All right, sir.
Yeah, ima ngilokhuza ngihlangane nabo abanye izolo.
If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content like this. And as always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.